As we mix all of these different designs, it can be so fun to just give your block an interesting look. Hi friends, and welcome back to Free Motion Basics with Grace. So let's jump into designs. You can see here I have just 2 color blocks, but I also did a couple with some varying designs. The first design we have here is our basic meander. So let's head on over to the machine and we'll show you just how we did it. I always like to start in the middle of my blocks because then I can move out and I don't have to deal with fabric shrinkage as much, so you won't end up with any kind of odd areas where the fabric puckers too much. So for the center of our block, we're gonna start out with the puzzle piece meander, and we're gonna fill in this square with that wiggly line. And I have my machine set to precise mode, and it's at 12 SPI. So now we're ready to go. And we're just gonna meander around to fill this block. And just like that, we filled our block. You can really see how that puzzle piece texture comes to life as we just fill in this little area very simply, and it's better than doing it in just a straight area. I've found this is a great filler stitch for large areas or small square areas where you just need to fill in and add some texture. For our next design, we are going to talk about this nice wavy line stitch here. This can be a super fun stitch just to echo along as you go or to make varying wavelengths. So again, I'm going to start in the corner, I'll bring up my bobbin, and I'm going to come down just a little bit. And we are going to make some nice waves as we meander through this block. I'm going to stitch in the ditch. And again, I'm just gonna echo and make some nice wavy lines. And now we filled our block in with that nice wavy line shape. So our next pattern is going to be the loopy meander, and we're gonna fill in this side log. So again, we're just gonna stay in that area. Think of the area of the block like a little fence. And now we filled that in with a nice loopy meander. So you can see here that just going back and forth from left to right, in this case it's up and down, you can see how simple it was just to make those loops, meander around as you go, and it makes a nice clean design to fill in this little log on our block. For our next design, we have our basic loop. So you can see I went ahead and just varied the size and shape of these designs so that you could add some texture and fun. You can vary the spacing if you wanted to, but I really just wanted to make sure that we had that basic pattern in as we filled in our log. In this block here is some nice echoed loops. This is very similar to an echoed pebble because the shape is very similar. This one is just more oval than it is circular. So you can see that we did one loop and then a second one, and we just kind of went around to make these varying shapes and sizes of our echoed loops to really add texture and dimension to this log on our block. For our top design, we use the double loop. So for this one, remember, we start in the middle of the edge of our block here, and then you just kind of go up and down so that you alternate the directions of your loops as it goes across like this, and it adds such a fun kind of bouncy, wavy texture to your log. For our next log, we did some fun wishbones. You can see that they're not perfect, they kind of vary in height and width, but it adds texture to the design nonetheless, and it's a great technique to use, especially in columns or sashings. We also did wishbones on the other side of our block where we tried to make them a little bit more bubbly. You can see here, these ones are narrower in size than the ones we did on this side here, where these ones are a little bit more bouncy, they're thicker, they're closer to that bubble shape that we were looking for. For our last design on this block, we went and made a nice loopy wishbone. So in this one, instead of making the figure 8, we just made sure that the edges were touching each time, and this adds a fun texture to the quilt as well. So it's nice and tight, and you get a similar shape to that wishbone, but you also end up with a different look and effect there. So now we're ready to move on to our next block here. We're again going to do a continuous curve, so we'll need to use our handy dandy erasable marking tool. And this is really gonna help me stay on track with my designs. And I also added 4 little points that'll help me to know where I want the edge of that curve to hit. So we'll start in our top left-hand corner of our center block. Now we're gonna come down and we're gonna try and hit this point right on the center and end here. Again, this is where we want our center point to be, and we're gonna end down at the center of our bottom of our block. Now we're ready to come back up. And then again, we're gonna try and hit this little dot here and end in the center of the top of our block. And just like that, we've got a cute little orange peel design on the center of our block. For our next technique, we have our fake matchstick look here. We use this technique as a nice filler and just alternated the sizes of each of our matchsticks and then echoed them on the other side to create a nice symmetrical look in our design. And each one has just a little bit of space, so we're not kissing the edge of it, we're just hugging and giving a nice little space between each one to get that fun design. For an alternative block, we do have some of these shapes where if you vary the width, you can see that this one is significantly narrower in its sizing than this one, where it adds a completely different texture just by altering how wide you make these little matchsticks. For our next design, we have the Serpentine. So we'll start in the top left-hand corner, and remember, we're just gonna kind of snake down and go back up as we echo all the way down this block. The Serpentine is a great design to use in a log cabin block, especially with those nice strips. It gives you a great area to fill in and have that nice kind of fun texture. You can see on this one, we added it to both edges to make a symmetrical design on either side of our quilt block. Moving on to our pebbles, the first pebble technique we want to talk about is this nice filler pebble. This is a little bit bigger than I would make it if I were micro stippling, but it's still small and it adds a different texture than these bubbles do here. And I am going to vary the size of my different pebbles so you can see how fun it is to fill in a block with some fun pebble shapes. For our next design here, we have our overlapping pebbles. You can see that they're not exactly even, they kind of overlap. This can be a great design to use, especially if you're newer to pebbles and you're not as great at getting that shape perfect every time. This can be a great way to practice and start out to get those bubbles and the pebbles to really align and cross over while not maintaining perfection. Much like our echoed loops that we talked about earlier, we're also going to talk about making some of these echoed pebbles. Echoed pebbles are similar to the echoed loops we did here, but it's going to be a little bit different because we're going to maintain that circular pebble shape. You can see that instead of having a big tall oval, we tried to make the nice circle shapes, and we echoed them a few more times so they kind of look like balloons. For our next technique, we have some fun ovals. For this one, we did kind of go back and forth and do different variations of it. So you can see here where they go this way, I did 4 of them, and then I filled in alternating the direction so that they would be horizontal going this way. And then I wanted to make a larger area of these vertical ovals, and then you can see how fun it is to just add in those little guys on the side here. For our next log, we made just some basic pebbles. This was fun because we were able to make them in little rows, just like this. So one of the important things when you're practicing techniques is to make sure that you're comfortable going different directions. So where we have our worksheet where you go from left to right to make those pebbles, this time we're gonna go top to bottom, do a row, and then come back up and do the second row. And if you wanted to, you could fill in this little area with some more pebbles, really fill it up, kind of like we did in our second block here. You could fill it in like this if you wanted to after going up and down like that, but I think I'm just gonna leave it because I like the texture. For our last technique, we have the bubbles, and these are so fun. It kind of looks like a rock wall. So similar to our pebbles, but it's okay for them to be a little bit wonky, and you can see the difference between just doing basic pebbles to fill in versus making these larger bubbles that kind of vary in size and width. As we mix all of these different designs, it can be so fun to just give your block an interesting look. You can see here that certain designs add a little bit more texture than others. When you're looking for a bird's eye view, depending on how you want your quilt to look, it's important to remember to vary the techniques that you use. You can see here that these bubbles really stand out, and so do the ovals, but a more dense pattern doesn't stand out. It's not as flashy as some of the other ones where like this nice back and forth loop here going the different directions really keeps the fabric loose. Try different designs, vary them, mix them up, whatever you choose, it's up to you. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode, and we can't wait to see what you create. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Grace Company Quilting for more quilty content. Follow us on social media and tag us in your posts. Don't forget to comment below what kind of techniques you want to see and what other blocks you think we should do. We can't wait to see what you create. See you next time.